Welcome to Studying Law Around the World. I'm Claudio Klaus. In each episode, I talk with lawyers, law students, and professors from different parts of the world to talk about legal education, careers, and what the profession looks like in real life. We talk about the hard parts, the surprises, and the decisions that shaped their paths. Whether you're planning to study abroad, thinking about working in another legal system, or just curious about how law works around the world, this podcast is for you. Today, I'll be interviewing Alanis Ortiz Espinosa. Thank you so much for making the time to come to the podcast, Alanis. I'm very excited to hear more about your experience as a lawyer, as an in-house counsel, and also a board member to both the Canadian Hispanic Bar Association and also BridgeWay Family Centre. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored, excited to be on this podcast, Claudio.
I really appreciate it. And to start, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your story, your journey from law studies to becoming a lawyer and also in-house counsel in Canada.
Sure. Just a little bit about me. As you said, my name is Alanis, and I actually always dreamed of becoming a lawyer. I think the dream began when I was 6 and I watched Legally Blonde. I just got so inspired by this, fashionista, young woman who wanted to go to law school. And I thought, that could be me. So definitely cinema inspired me, but it also helps that I loved reading and loved the social sciences. So I knew throughout high school, I took all the courses. And then once it came to the time to choose my school, I had to choose whether, I'm staying here in Canada or I'm going abroad. And so I chose to go through the UK route. And that was really my path. I think for the most part, it was straightforward, although there were times where I doubted that I'd ever get there, and doubted that I could get through the many years of schooling, but one step at a time. Yeah, eventually got here.
That's amazing. And I'm so excited to hear even more as we go through today's episode. But I know you've built this practice, and you've built experience in both the private practice and in-house roles as well. So I'm curious to hear from you, what are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed on all the way from how lawyers practice, on how decisions are made and also delivered in both of those environments?
Yes. So I actually began working for a company while I was in law school. So though I wasn't practicing, I was on in the legal department, and so I saw the way they functioned, and I grew to really grow a love for in-house counsel and in-house work. I just thought it was so unique that they have one client, which is the company, and you build such a relationship with this company, not only in a legal sense, but in a business sense, the best thing for the company long term. And so I really liked that relationship between me and my client, me and the company. And so I worked there for a couple of years. And then when it came time to articling, I thought, I started my career technically in-house, and I really wanted that private practice experience. So I did do my articling at a boutique law firm, and I saw very different environment. It's a completely different setup in a private practice. You have many clients. You're, doing the interviews, intake, doing the files, closing the files, and then having more clients come in. So I think just fundamentally, it's very different working in the in-house and the private practice. And eventually I did come back to in-house, but I'm really glad that I got both experiences because I think they're both so different. But I did learn that I'm someone that loves that long-term vision. And so I think that that's why in-house really works for me, because I just love working with the company in all areas and just love helping them in any way that I can, and getting to give them all of my energy. So I really love in-house.
Fantastic. No, that's incredible. And you served on boards, and you currently serve on boards of different not-for-profit organizations, associations. So I'm curious to hear, a little bit about, the community sense and how that plays a role in your life. And even, what drew you to leadership, to governance roles alongside with your legal career.
Yes, I became interested in boards while I was in my undergrad. And it's quite peculiar because all the people that I knew on boards were like over 50, at the end of their careers, they had a lot of extra time to volunteer. But I've always been an avid person that loves volunteering. And I thought, well, I don't think I necessarily need to be over 50 to join a board. I mean, of course, they all have so much experience and so much wisdom, but I think that boards should also reflect our communities, and our communities are many people of many ages. So I thought that my young voice could, serve the community. So I joined my first board in 2017, I believe. It was a legal clinic in the Peel region. And because it was my first board role, I learned a lot about not for profits, the background of all these not for profits, the finance, governance. And because, I studied political science as my undergrad, I also grew to really enjoy governance work and supporting these not for profits that benefit our communities. So that was 2017. And then over time, I thought, well, once my term ends, I can find another board role. And I found the Canadian Hispanic Bar Association while I was studying law in England. I was the only Latin American that I knew of, not only in the cohort, in my year, in almost the whole university. A lot of people hadn't met a Latin American before they met me. So, although it's very exciting to be the first, Latina that people meet, it was very isolating. I just didn't see myself reflected. And I think that's really important for people to see themselves in their profession, in the places that they're studying or working in. So that's when I branched out and I thought, well, there must be a community of Hispanic lawyers in Canada or somewhere. And so quickly after beginning my search, I found the CHBA. I joined as a student member, became a mentee, and eventually applied to be on the board. That was in 2021. This year, it's 5 years on the board, and very exciting to see even from when I joined the board to now, how much they've grown, how they've grown in terms of their events, the scale events, their gala that they had last year, but also across Canada. I see their presence growing. So it's really incredible to see our numbers growing, our presence getting stronger. And yeah, just overall, getting back to boards, I found them to really illuminate my career, and they've become something that I'm very passionate about and hope to continue being part of.
That's amazing. So, considering this points that community plays such a big role for you, seems to be really a part of your professional identity. And if we can drill down a little bit more on that, how has being part of the Canadian Hispanic Bar Association influenced your growth as a lawyer, as a leader, as really a member of the legal community?
Yes. Amazing question. And it brings a lot of memories of my time when I was starting law school. As I mentioned, it was a childhood dream and something that I was very passionate about. But I think a common thing that happens when we're very passionate and excited about something, we're also scared of it. So, although I wanted to be a lawyer, I also equally had this immense fear that would overtake me. And even when I got into law school and while I was in law school, I often doubted if I could ever be a good lawyer, or at least be the kind of lawyer that I wanted to be. And that really affected me. I think I struggled a little bit at the beginning with public speaking, but I knew that if I was going to go on this journey of becoming a lawyer, I really had to push against those fears and try my best. Yeah, I think public speaking was a big part of my growth throughout law school. And so I actually applied when I applied to join the board of the CHBA, it was more of a test of can I do this interview? I didn't think I'd actually get elected. So it was really just practice my public speaking. That application and that first interview was really to just prove to myself that I can speak in front of others and be eloquent. And that was all. That was all I wanted, but I somehow ended up on the board, and there were 10 people running that year. I was the only student. They were all lawyers. I was very overwhelmed, but I'm very grateful because now looking at who I was when I was applying to now, I've grown so much in terms of my public speaking. I feel a lot more comfortable. And yeah, that the board has really, really been such an important community to me and beyond even career. These are people that I really enjoy being around. They're my friends and just an incredible group of people that I get to learn from, catch up with, learn about their careers, their trajectories. So the CHP has been fundamental to my growth and I'm very grateful. And I hope everyone can find their similar community.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's so incredible that you've found that community, just like you said. And going back to
hearing a little more about your practice as well in law. I understand that you've worked across business law, real estate, estates, broader corporate matters. So I'm curious here, both in your role as in-house counsel and in your private practice experience as well, what areas of law have shaped you the most, do you think, and why?
I think the most valuable area, and I don't know if it's area, but in terms of law school subjects, what helped me the most was actually contract law. I've used contract everything that I've learned in that course in all areas. I think reviewing contracts, reading contracts is absolutely important in all areas, and also being a good researcher, I think as well, has really covered all the areas that I've worked in. But in terms of the practice areas, I think corporate law has really influenced me as well because in the real estate transactions, in the estates cases, in almost all the other areas, I think corporate is also very much present in those areas. So yeah, I think they're all very interconnected, but definitely contract law has helped me in every job that I've worked.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's incredible. Just in another podcast I recorded earlier today, we were just talking about how more and more in different parts of the world, just imagining like overall commercial law, how aligned it is more and more.
Yes.
Doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter, who do you see writing about. It feels like it's really one of those areas of law that really got kind of a worldwide kind of coverage, or at least, the same principles and all of that.
Yes.
Recently spoke with somebody who works with mining law as well, and they were talking about how in this same idea, right, of going with the same legal principles, going with the overall ideas of what practicing law looks like, that definitely made sense, even though there were, of course, cultural differences, legal differences, but still, overall, a contract is a contract everywhere. How
Exactly.
people own up to it afterwards might change in different parts of the world, but it really makes a difference, right? To have that clearly written piece of paper that will make it known to all parties what they're supposed to do, how that should work. So I love that you brought up contracts as one of your top on that sense. And since you mentioned, law school, and all of that, if you're looking back in your career as an early professional, as a law student, are there a few moments that you'd say were hardest transitions, and if so, how you moved through them? But also, is there anything that you'd say, this is one of the moments that I'm most proud of?
100%. I definitely had very difficult moments, and some more than others, but I would say that that licensing transition when you finished law school and you're doing all the licensing preparations to become licensed, it was very difficult for me because when you graduate, when you're in law school, you have a whole university supporting you. You have, the guidance counselors, the faculty. If you have questions, you always have somewhere to go to, a number to call. And I found like that day that I graduated, I was like, okay, well, from now on, I'm depending on myself to do all the research and find all the answers. And there's just several routes to getting licensed, one being the LLM, but I did choose to continue working full time while I was getting licensed. So I sought to do the NC exams by myself, like self study. And I think that's why it was so hard because I whenever I had a question or I wasn't sure about, how many exams to take at a time, how much can I manage, I had to really figure that all out by myself. And I did lose contact with a lot of the law graduates that I studied with. So I didn't have that, student group to lean on either. And so I think that time was very difficult. And it's also this kind of weird limbo that no one talks about. I mean, you're a law graduate, but you're not a lawyer. And so what are you? And what kinds of jobs can I apply for? And it's a really, you know, interesting place to be in for years. It's not just a few months, it's years at a time. That was really difficult to navigate. But as you mentioned, I think a lot of the most difficult moments in our lives make us that much stronger. So I'm very proud of getting through those moments and for the people that supported me, including the CHPA. But yes, I think those moments are not to be feared for sure, but they do come.
No, absolutely. I love that. I appreciate you bringing that up because it can be a little frustrating, right? The idea that it even impacts of like your identity, how you present yourself to the world, right? Because we
Yes.
don't want to misrepresenting anyway. So it definitely is an interesting limbo. I appreciate you bringing that up. I don't think I heard somebody using that word, but it just
Yes.
describes exactly what it is.
I'd almost even avoid like a lot of public settings because especially with family, they would all be asking like, "So you're a lawyer, can you help me with this?" No, I'm not a lawyer yet, but you graduated law school. Yes, but there's, this licensing process. I didn't pass the bar yet. So it's just such a big thing and not a lot of people understand it unless you're going through it, right? And so that's why it's very hard to navigate as someone doing it for the first time and maybe you don't know many people who've gone through it.
Right, right, right. No, and
Yeah.
I would even say that probably what, like, 3, 4 years ago, that was still even kind of harder to figure it out, right? Like I feel like
Yes.
a lot we have much more on the internet. We have,
Yes.
people who are sharing information on their blogs, on LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever. But those are all kind of very
Yes.
new. We haven't had that for a long time, right?
Agreed. I mean, your podcast didn't exist back when I was in law school. We didn't have ChatGPT. That would have really helped me. But I was, searching through LinkedIn, trying to get coffee chats with people, going on Reddit. But yeah, I think there's so much information now. And with every day that passes, there's more on the internet, which is amazing. But there was definitely that period. It was before COVID where it was a lot harder to find this information.
Mm-hmm. No, that's something that we like have to acknowledge for sure, that that was an interesting moment. Everybody stuck in their homes. Happily, a lot of people decided, I'll start content creating, and I think that that generated a lot of good stuff that is still out there. Either people continue doing what they started back then. This podcast is, a matter of fact, one of those byproducts. So I'm very proud and grateful of that. Not so great of a moment we were living as a world and society. I'd like to think that we just try to make the most out of it, right?
Agreed.
And to wrap up today's episode, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to young lawyers or early career professionals who are trying to build a meaningful career, trying to find their community, find their CHBA,
Yes.
while also, staying connected to their identity, staying connected to leadership opportunities. More and more, we see that as you go through your career, there's different expectations, right? And in the beginning of your career, maybe there's different priorities regarding to business development, to visibility, all of that. So I wanted to hear, what are some of your ideas on that? Early career professionals, law students who are listening and tuning into today's episode, what are some things that you'd recommend to be done?
So a few of the things I love to share with students when they ask me these questions. One being timelines are different for everyone, and it's really not fair to compare our timelines. For example, for me, I wanted to work full time after graduating. Maybe someone else doesn't want to or need to work full time after graduating. We're going to be studying at different paces. Some people have families, some people are married. We all have different responsibilities. We all have completely different paths. And I think for a lot of us, having LinkedIn is such a benefit, but it can also be a place where we compare ourselves and compare our timelines. Oh, they're getting called and I haven't, or I have and they haven't. We often do that. Yeah, I think a lot of lawyers are high achievers, so it's understandable. But I also think that our timelines are just so attached to us and it's not fair to compare. And so really just staying on your timeline and know that it's okay if things are not happening as fast as you want them to. And it's okay to maybe elongate your licensing process. And I'm really just saying that because my licensing took so long and I would have loved to hear that. So it's okay to take your time. And second, I would say is take care of yourself. I really wanted to get licensed and, was overstudying, almost burning out, and it's not sustainable. As we all know, lawyers, we're using our brains almost all day. It's our most prized possession. But with a healthy mind, you need a healthy body first. So I would say take care of your body. And that means, pacing yourself, don't overextend yourself, take a break, exercise when you get fresh air, see your friends. I think it's all important and balance is also very key. Third thing I would say, which you mentioned, identity. And this is another big thing with lawyers. I think a lot of us oftentimes identify just as lawyers and our whole life is wrapped up into this identity and it's great, but also, I think we're more than our profession. We're all multifaceted. We all have hobbies, other interests. And I think it's amazing to see ourselves as beyond lawyers, more than that. And I think overall, the overarching theme is really, live a balanced life. And that means also seeking your communities like the CHPA, and just know that everything will happen in its time. I hope that makes sense.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. As a young professional myself, I feel inspired by what you just said. So, really, really much appreciated. Those are, if anything, they're great reminders of things that we need to be often reminded to do more and more. So, I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I wanted to thank you truly for coming in the show and to share a little more about your story, your career, and also your insights for our public. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for creating this space for young people. As we said, this didn't exist years ago. So I really appreciate all the work you're doing in this space.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning into today's episode and listening.